There we go. So welcome, everybody. This is the Crossing Paths training for 2021-22, and it's called multi-platform. So if you're joining us and you've never done Crossing Paths, raise your hand. You've never done Crossing Paths. Okay. And those of you who are not live, no problem. And if you've done Crossing Paths, tell me if you've done the online last year.
Yes.
Raise your hand. Yep. And if has anyone done Crossing Paths in person, which would have been 2018-19? No. Okay. That's great. Well, there we go. That gives me a sense of how to introduce our multi-platform program. I'm going to go to some slides now. I love to see your happy faces, but I do want to go through the slides that we have for this orientation. So let me get them. There's my Zoom thing. There we go. Thank you for being patient. And that's the very last slide. Let's see if we can go to the beginning, because of course I was opening up. Where is it? Dun, dun, dun. Surely I won't have to go through each one. Okay, we'll do it really fast. Okay, here we go. You got this? There we go. And one more person just got into our waiting room. So this is our orientation. What it means is I'm going to give you an overview of the kinds of things that we look for you as leaders, you as directors of religious education, that you can start planning and you can get it ready. I am recording. I have a big note that says, don't forget, Katie, to record. And so I also want to welcome the people who are going to be watching this as a recording. Who are we? Let me go to the next slide. So my name's Katie Covey. I am also known as the class clown, but I'm doing that as an example because this is a middle school curriculum. So you always want to be ready for them to change their names or give themselves a little thing. And instead of being surprised, how about we just say, give yourself a name. I need to know your real name, but then assign yourself what you'd like to be in this group. So for me, I put on class clown just to remind us that we are dealing with these lovely 6th, 7th, 8th graders. Some of you do it 5th, 6th, some of you do it a little older, but that's our target audience. My co-author is Reverend Scott Taylor. He's our team lead and the founder of Soul Matters, and he takes me up. I tell you, you guys, I write these packets and then he makes me go this far. He's like, okay, Katie, now we got to do this because we are Soul Matters. We have this reputation for excellence, and I really love working with him. Sometimes it's hard because I'm like, no, I just wrote this whole thing and now you want me to do this. All right. What we will cover today. So I'm going to do 4 different sections, and I know when you're online, it's hard to keep track, especially since I've got an hour program tonight. I'm going to do a section on what multi-platform crossing paths looks like, a section on our general program flow, a section on implementing the unique elements that we bring to this interfaith visit curriculum that's so popular in Unitarian Universalism, and then a brief time of how we can support you and your facilitators. Okay, I have 2 screens going. That's why I'm going to be looking off. Let me get, there we go. Gee. So multi-platform. There's 3 ways to do multi-platform, and this is, once again, reinventing the wheel. So last year we reinvented the wheel and we created online crossing paths, totally online. This year we recognize that there are some people going online in September. There are some people who will not be going online, but they think they might hit it in December. There are some people who might want to do some kind of hybrid. And now, of course, with Delta variants, we're saying, uh-oh, are we going to go backwards? So with all that uncertainty in our programming, Scott and I are going to try and do it all, because that seems to be the most helpful thing right now, is to have 3 types of possibilities. Let me go through these each one, and I'm going to tease it out. So in person together, as you know, in person was the traditional, you sit in a circle. These are kids from my GA Crossing Paths in 2018, I think. I ran the middle school camp, and I offered Crossing Paths as the middle school camp at GA. And we went out from the conference center and visited the 4 different faiths that were right downtown that we could either bus to or walk to. So in-person possibilities, we have the graffiti board, we do a centering, and then we do the exploration and games. And of course, if you're doing in-person Crossing Paths, you're going to do an in-person visit. I have a caveat to that in a minute, but if we are open, maybe that's what we'll get to do, because that certainly is one of the most powerful experiences, is to go into the other faith. Last thing I'll say is I have Danish relatives who say, Katie, you go around and you Americans come to Europe and you visit the cathedrals and you see all this stuff, and you never go to your own things nearby. And so I'm very proud that we are taking our kids to our neighbor faiths. I think that's really cool. All right. So then there is, of course, the totally online. You're going to be doing a Zoom. You're not going to see any in-person thing. We do some of the differences last year when we had totally online Zooms together. We did mindful texting with the chat, and we taught our leaders how to do mindful texting. So it was, tell us in the chat something that makes you joyful. So that would have been the best thing we could do, because we always want the centering to be somehow experiential. And for Zoom, that was what we came up with, typing in the chat. Of course, we had online games. And then, of course, we had a virtual visit and a virtual interview. And as a preview to hybrid, this virtual interview proved very powerful. And that's what we're going to do with multi-platform hybrid. So this is the possibility that exists, that you could do a little bit of both. And imagine this. Say your child can't go on the visit to the Jewish temple. So we're going to have a virtual link that they could watch to get a sense of what a Jewish service in a synagogue would look like. So if you miss a Sunday, you could do that. The second thing is, here's another 21st century faith possibility. You could set up a laptop on a chair and invite the kid who can't come in to the in-person session. And as we get more sophisticated with multi-platform, maybe, I know Sam Dickerson's church is putting a screen in every single room of their building now. And so you'd have that screen as your Zoom. We wouldn't have to have a laptop on a chair, would we? We'd have the technology to Zoom in to a meeting. Now, the thing that's going around in Scott and my brain is, would it ever become totally Zooming in and in person, and would anyone come to the in-person? These are the questions which we can't answer in August 2021. Maybe by December, we'll have some more hybrid options for you. One of the reasons that we release these packets in a flow is that they get better and better as we grow through the year. So this year, it's going to be what kinds of 21st century faith formation we're going to offer. Then the last bullet point there is that what we're putting in the packets now is color-coded options. Because quite frankly, I was going, which one is online? Do we say online? This one's online, this one's, oh, it was getting really confusing. And so we're trying this. We'd love the feedback. But the activities for in-person crossing paths are going to be in black. That's sort of our basic foundational packet information. Then, of course, the activities for online only. Some of the games that we're bringing forward from last year are in purple, so that if you're doing online, you have a purple option. You know that's online. That's on online. Well, that's all online. And if you're doing all in person, you can just skip the purple so you don't get confused. Then, of course, I had to confuse and muddle it because the activities which could be used for both are in green. The example I can give you for this is a Google slide deck that we created for looking at different perspectives. And that comes up in the UU packet this first September. And so it's so cool. You could share it with your kids in person, or you could do it online. And I just wanted to confuse things that the green could be used for both. I'm sure you creative people could come up with games for in-person that could be done online, like Pictionary, like the things we've zoomed in all year long. Anyway, let's see if there's anything. Okay. So I want to tease out the virtual visit a little bit. The advantages of interviewing a leader. So of course, this is Oprah interviewing the Dalai Lama there. We've gotten really powerful feedback from those folks who offered this online last year, that maybe they had an interview with a rabbi or the rabbi's neighbor or a Jewish person nearby who lived next to the DRE. And it was wonderful because nobody had to travel. They just went and onto Zoom and talked with this person. So that's something we could do both ways, couldn't we? We could say, yes, when we're visiting, could we have an interview with you? Or maybe there's not time. And maybe we say, could we interview on Zoom for 30 minutes, get all the kids there on Zoom. So I see that as a real powerful tool for us. The other part of virtual visit, which you will discover in the September packet, we're inviting the kids to look at their congregation's website to get a sense of Unitarian Universalism, to get a sense of their congregation, and explore it as if they were just thinking of visiting. Because as you know, 80% of our potential visitors go to our websites first. And so it'd be real interesting to ask them to do it with those eyes, with those lenses. And then, of course, then we have the big videos of a worship and our core spiritual practice that they could watch if they miss it. Or realize this, let's say you don't have a Buddhist temple in your town. You could use the virtual video to do Buddhism and show them that there's two possibilities. It's real rich practice right there. So what if you don't have a pagan group? Well, you can use the videos. So that's the way we're going to do virtual visits. Okay, that's the end of the multi-platform thing. Are there any questions, since that's the brand new part of Crossing Paths? All right, let's move on to program flow. Oh, did someone want to say something? All right. There's 4 kinds of program flow. We'll go through each kind. First, we have the yearly flow of all the faith traditions. Whoops, excuse me. We have all of the faiths that we cover. So there they are. UU comes first in September, so we can ground these children in their own faith. What a novel idea. When I took church across the street way back 200 years ago, we didn't know what Unitarian Universalism was all about. And when our people asked, you know, the people we were visiting asked us as kids, we'd be like, blah, 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 blah. So this way they're grounded in Unitarian Universalism, as well as getting an orientation to crossing paths. Then we do Judaism, Islam, Buddhism. Paganism was new last year, and it's going to be part of this year's Catholicism, which, by the way, I mean, going to midnight mass at Christmas, that's pretty awesome. But anyway, that's my personal opinion. Christianity in general, Quaker, mega churches, that's the evangelical mega churches, evangelical Christian mega churches. Hinduism, and we're going to write a whole packet for humanism. Now you say, how do I do this? Let me get down to my notes for we have a packet production schedule. It's on a scheduling chart, which is on the web. And you go to this Google Doc and you can see when Scott and I are going to release the packets. So August, actually, it's coming out Saturday. I just talked to Susan and she's like, it's coming. So this Saturday will be the orientation session, which we recommend you do with parents and kids, and the Unitarian Universalism. Then September 1st, we like to start with Christianity and Judaism because we emerge out of those faiths, out of the Judeo-Christian tradition, and it gives them, once again, that grounding, that foundation. Then by October 15th, you'll have Catholicism, Buddhism, and Evangelical. So by August 15th, you'll be able to choose Evangelical, Buddhism, Catholicism, Christianity, Judaism. You'll have 5 possibilities. Then you can go down and see when they are going to be released. And paganism gets released March 1st, and it works out really well to do it around the spring equinox. All right. So let's go back to our presentation. Multi-platform. Let's see if this is it. Nope, that's the one I'm going to give you so you can show everybody else. So that's where the scheduling chart is. If you want to find it again, it's on the Crossing Paths webpage of the Soul Matters site. So now we did yearly flow. We have a monthly flow. So each Sunday of 4 Sundays, you'll have what's called Map Sunday, Tack Sunday, Summit Day, and Lake Sunday. We use a mountaineering metaphor throughout Crossing Paths. I'll describe to you more about why we do it that way. It's not just to be cutesy, but it informs us as many paths, many mountains. The first 2 are the overview of the faith. You're getting your guide going, you're getting your gear going. Summit Day is your visit. And Lake Sunday, you come back down off the summit and you do your reflection. All right. Let me just check for a second. Good. The next flow is the session flow. So for in-person session, we do a graffiti board that's there while they're walking in. We do a centering. Then we do the activities where you do explain and engage in fun ways. Then we do a very short closing. So this is an example from one of the GA camps. I want to show you that the graffiti board really isn't complicated. There's a core question that you write at the top. In this case, what is Buddhism? And there you can see the different things that they describe. For me, this is a name what you know exercise based on an old way to write curriculum called the praxis model. Don't need to know that. But it's not fancy. And the kids just write down, name what you know. Some of the kids draw things. And there's one, I don't know much about the religion. No, it's fine. It's just fine. Don't want to make it intimidating. All right. With the online, we don't do a graffiti board. If you're creative, you could do a whiteboard Zoom feature, but that gets into sort of a second level of Zoom, and I didn't want to complicate things for leaders. Let's see what else. What we want to do is get into these experiential activities as soon as possible. So the centering is 10 minutes at the most. So if you're doing in person, for me, when middle schoolers walk into a room, they are very like nervous, self-conscious. They might start acting out if there's nothing to do. My acting out, our children, yes, they do that, don't they? And so this way, there's a centering activity as you're getting kids walking in the room at different times. In addition, the kid who's new or a little shy or introvert, I like to be nice to them. And this is a way they can interact without right away looking at who's talking to who and what am I supposed to be doing. So that's your session flow. The last flow is the flow of the basic lenses. Now, lenses are like what binoculars are when you're looking at your map and you're looking at your equipment on the mountain. We provide the stats always because, you know, what's the fourth largest religion in the world? I don't know, you know, who cares? But they do need to know just 5 minutes of the statistics. And we always have the ratio to what they are to UU. So we go on 200,000 UUs in the world, if we're lucky. So there's like 9 Catholics for every 1 UU, something like that. So you do the stats, then you do what's called the problem. Now, this is right out of Stephen Prothero. His book, God is Not One, is what has informed us as a curriculum. For each of the major world religions, he writes, what is the problem that they see in the world? And what is this religion's solution to that problem? Let me give you some examples. So for Christianity, the problem is sin, and the solution is salvation. Sounds pretty familiar. How about Judaism? The problem is exile, and the solution is reunion with God. The problem and solution for Buddhism, the problem is suffering. The solution is enlightenment. So this is the way that Prothero has said, these religions are really very different from each other. It's called a religious pluralism. It's a theology of pluralism rather than there is one sort of universal religion. When you look at them through problem and solution, you see how different they are. And that's what we want our kids to get. Then we do a symbol if there's a symbol. And then we pick some of the other lenses. Like for Christianity, they need to know that the Bible is their basic holy book. The Quran is the basic holy book for Muslim. Now, just so you know, when you get to problem and solution for some of the smaller faiths, Quakerism, mega church, and UU, Prothero doesn't do this. He only does 8, and we have 11, right? So Scott and I, actually it's Scott, I'm like, you're the theologian, you do this part, Scott. So for you, for instance, the problem and the solution for you, the problem that we see in the world is the separation from our deepest selves, the separations from life's joy, the separation from each other. And the solution is connection. And when he came up with that, I immediately resonated, because one of our basic, I would call them holy forms, is the circle. And that is the connection. So we came up with our own. There we go. So that's the program flow, the yearly, the sessions, the in-session, and the religious pluralism. Now, what are the unique elements of this crazy program that you guys are going to try and do? There are some unique elements. This is the one unique element, is our religious pluralism, our emphasis on that. So when I was a kid, when you do neighboring faiths, they don't talk about religious pluralism. What I learned, what we taught through the 90s, was there are many mountains, but there is one path up the mountain. And what we are learning now with religious pluralism is that there are many mountains and many paths. You see the difference there? And this is a game I invented called Many Mountains, Many Paths, Pin the Tail on the Donkey. So you get strips of the faith, and they do the spin, and they try and pin the path on the mountains. This is the kind of things we want to do with these middle schoolers. So what we are recognizing among the faiths is the diversity of faith, as well as the beauty of each faith. This is the introduction for these 6th, 7th graders. I want you to know that I get lots of comments saying, well, how come you didn't bring up the fill in the blank, the racism of the megachurch, or the homophobia of the megachurch, or those are, I'm not picking on megachurch, but those are some of the comments I've gotten. The reason is we've deliberately chosen to focus on the beauty of each faith for this first introduction. They will come to understand as they grow up that each faith, including our own, has its shadow side. But for now, as the introduction, we want them to understand the beauty. The way we do this is also called our theology of connection. Remember our Prothero separation connection. We talk about the 3 lifelines, and we do this over and over with them. The connection to our deepest selves. We do an actual rope, and it's a thin lanyard with a carabiner. And that's something you might want to give them if you're meeting in person. For online, there's a different exercise. The second is the connection to life's gifts and joys. This is the tug of peace circle rope. And they all have to try and stand up together. It's instead of tug of war. And the connection to serving others. Again, this is the connection, a long jump rope. And we don't want to be ableists with the jump rope. And so you can do it just as a thing that you roll over. When I did jump roping in GA, some of the kids knew how to do double Dutch. Some of them had never jump roped in their life. And all we did was swing it back and forth on the ground like a snake. That's like the first skill. So just a thing for that, just a note for that. Okay, so now we're moving into the centering, which is another essential and unique element of crossing paths. We wanted the centering to be hands-on, because very few middle schoolers that I know of really like to sit there and think. No. We have a video centering song from the faith. So it's like there's this beautiful Bismillah song, and we try to get contemporary songs from YouTube. And then if you're doing the online, we have a mindful chat. If you aren't doing the online, we have other things. Let me tell you what they are. Here's an example. It might be draw your room while you're studying Judaism so that you can start to understand a sense of belonging and home. Or for Christianity, and we're talking about the Bible as the guiding book for Christianity, what might be a guiding book for you? I know middle schoolers who have read Harry Potter like 25 times, right? And it's certainly just fine that they connect to that sense of a guiding book by saying, oh yeah, I've read Harry Potter cover to cover 25 times. It may not be as theologically accurate to compare Harry Potter and the Bible, and yet for 12, 13, and 14-year-olds, it's the heart work that we want to get at, not so much the accuracy. This is not a course on comparative religions. It's a course on understanding others and diversity. We want this to be relevant to their journey. So what we're doing is doing faith formation. We're not emphasizing facts. So we have a personal application section in every Lake Sunday. And these are special questions. I think I'm going to have, we don't want to just fill their heads with facts. We want to fill their hearts and shape their faith. We do centering so that sharing silence together is a faith formation experience. And we have what we call the 8 practices of welcoming. I'm going to tease these out next. So the personal application questions in Lake Sunday. Here's an actual example. So think about how the visit and the past few weeks gave them a challenge for their own life from Islam. Here's what you as a leader or your leaders might say. So are you curious about fasting as a spiritual practice? Would you like some of us to try it out together and explore what a UU version might look like? You see how it's applying to their life. Has the Muslim practice of Hajj made you excited about doing a UU pilgrimage? If your church has a pilgrimage part of their congregation, you know, where we have the 9th grade trip to Hopi Lands here in Colorado. People go to Boston, you know, all these places. It needs to be asking them these personal questions once they've done the visit. How has this changed you? Then we have what we call, let's see what the next, the 8 practices of welcoming. So this is where we're really teaching our faith. Be fully present, be curious, be open to being changed, be comfortable with discomfort, be an appreciative listener, be lighthearted, be gentle, and be yourself. We like to have these life skills transform the visit into a training ground for their own faith formation instead of visiting the zoo. Can you feel the difference? So many interfaith visit curriculums that I have experienced feel sort of like visiting the zoo. And for instance, when we had a Lutheran youth group come to visit us, we definitely felt like they were watching us, like we were some kind of weirdos. Instead, we want our children to go into them to look at ways they can learn life skills and transform themselves by encountering diversity. And think of it, that's a life skill for everything, for racial awareness, everything. So that's what we want to do. And we don't just say that, okay, these 8 practices are going to be your theoretical things. What we do is we explain them, and we have activities in the session, this orientation session and the UU session. We have physical tokens that symbolize the practices, and I'll tease this out in the next slide. We review these practices before every visit. It's part of the little ritual that you go through before, like in the parking lot, before you walk in. We evaluate how we use them after each visit. So which one was hard for you in this situation? Which one was easy for you? We ask parents to discuss them with their youth at home. Part of Crossing Paths is engaging the parents, and we'll go into that in a minute. We remind them about the practices through words, through activities, through physical tokens, through their parents, before we go and after we go. We're empowering them to implement these in their own lives. So here's a taste. So be fully present. How about a tiny wrapped present? Get it? Or an object that calls people to awareness, like a ringing bowl, or a Hershey's kiss, to be present. Or being open to being changed. What about the token as a butterfly, or some change, literally change coins, or a giant jawbreaker with multiple colors? Remember, these are middle schoolers, and these kids are looking at the tokens right there as we did this exercise with them. It's coming up in the orientation. Okay. We also, what is unique about Crossing Paths is this is not a heady curriculum, because I was trained in faith formation. I don't want middle schoolers to get really bored. They just don't function in the world like that. So we have tons of fun and games. There'll be online games, and then there these 4 games. We have the soap game, because soap was a contribution by the Islamic faith in the right before the Renaissance. Do you know the Islamic faith actually propelled Europe into the Renaissance because of their ability to, they created hospitals, soaps, all these things. Anyway, so there's a game with soap. For the spaghetti noodle building is the Christian practice of teaming up with God to build a better world. So you, of course, team up with your kids and make interesting things. This is one way, spaghetti noodles and little blue tape. I've seen it done with marshmallows and toothpicks, although the kids tend to eat them a lot. You might have to regulate that. And peas and toothpicks, which of course are not as exciting to eat. Then there's the balance board for Buddhism, maintaining the middle way. And this game is called the Cheeto Toss game. It's where we ask the leaders in person to set this up, and they get to toss a Cheeto into the shaving cream for each thing that stuck to them during the year that they remember. This is the closing session. Yeah, so we get a little crazy. Okay, this is the engaging parents part. Each time in the packet, you will see in each set, right before each session, we have the dinner and drive time tips. That's because we all know that the kids sometimes bring these things up while you're driving in a car, right? So, or maybe at dinner time. So we have a before, an after, and a for you, for the parents. So before, here's an example. Watch the video with your youth and discuss your reactions. What did you learn? This primes the pump for these middle schoolers. And this guy, Zach Anner, is a guy with CP in a wheelchair, and he has gone out and made interfaith visits. Fantastic guy, fantastic resource. And what we'd like you to do, and what we hope you do, is send these out to the parents, you know, Wednesday before Sunday or whenever you're going to meet. Then the next of the 3 sessions, and it's all in one paragraph, is after. So the kids come back and what did you do? Nothing. Well, here we give a little prompt for the parents. We explored how Muslims invite Allah to guide their actions using the phrase Bismillah Allah. It's a means of acting with your values front and center. And then talk about the ways you as a parent have centered yourself before important actions or decisions. See, giving them ways to talk to each other. And then finally, we want something for the parents to do. Spend some time expanding your own understanding of Islam. Here are some great places. We don't want to overwhelm them, but these are 2 short YouTube videos to learn about Islam. And this might be something the leaders want to do too, although we have an extensive leader background with videos in there too. All right. We have a unique approach. We're still in this category about what makes Crossing Paths unique to visits. We take the 8 practices of welcoming that we went over before, and we have heart questions for the interview questions. That means we're not just asking the faith leader to tell us facts. We're asking them to evoke storytelling, to evoke their own personal transformation in their faith, and to evoke what they're passionate about. When you go at interview questions this way, you get entirely different interactions. This is my gang. We went to Grace and Trinity Episcopal Cathedral right next to the conference center. We also ask these leaders questions that can start to evoke their own brokenheartedness, because when they share their brokenheartedness by saying, what message does the world most powerfully need right now? You know, racial justice, God's love, whatever they want to say. We get this connection of a conversation rather than that feeling of visiting the zoo. There's our 8 practices. So you see, here's this gang of kids looking around. They've been thinking about the 8 practices. Be curious, be a listener. It was a wonderful event. And here's an example of the questions we gave to the leader. Oh, geez, I forget her name. What does the cross symbolize for you? How has Christianity helped enrich, heal, or deepen you? Who is your favorite Christian biblical historical figure? And is there a particular Christian belief or perspective that you think is especially relevant to our culture and political climate right now? I want to give you some tips about these questions. They are so deep that she was given a page of questions. We usually provide 12 questions, and she wanted to answer all 12. And of course, the kids were like, we're going to be here another hour after the service. So there's 2 ways to do this. Invite the youth to choose a question from the list or make up their own. Or you can send the questions to the religious leader beforehand and say, would you pick the top 4 that call to you that you'd like to share with us? I suggest 4 because it gets them talking. It truly is a conversation. And we were there for quite a while before I learned how to do that. And both of these people were answering those questions. They couldn't help it. They just loved them. Okay, so now we're going to do a short thing on how else we support you as a facilitator, or if you're a DRE, as you can support your own people. Now, I am going to put in the chat box this series of slides so that you can show your people, and you can change them around as much as you want because some of them wouldn't be as appropriate. So let me do that right now. I just have to grab it, which might be easier said than done. I thought I'd be prepared, but of course I'm not. to do this. I'll tell you what, I'll do this in a little bit. Don't let me forget. And let me get back to where I am. I'm not in the right place. Thank you for your patience. I'm in this. Nope. Oh, I know how to do it. Okay. And there you are. I couldn't find you for a minute there. All right, I'm going to share my screen again, and we'll get back to the presentation. There we go. Okay, facilitator support. Don't let me forget to share that in the chat, okay? So we also include paragraph of leader background for every single session. This is our 5th year of offering Crossing Paths. And what we learned was leaders say, well, I don't know anything about Islam. What am I supposed to do? So we give you the top 3 videos that we recommend that you watch to get the nutshell of Islam right there. And then we have digging deeper videos if somebody really wants to go, but we didn't want to overwhelm them. We also have leader scripts. So it would be as if we'd say this. And then we, of course, want them not to read it. We want you to say it in your own words, but we've given you the outline and also coaching by me. Here you go. Invest in your program. Don't go crazy. I am available for some paid coaching. I also am happy to answer your questions, and that's under that website. I won't dwell on that, but I also do the whole family orientation for you if you want to do that. It's $50 an hour. We can talk about it. So in closing, what I want to do is share with you, and by the way, I'm going to share, we're going to have a whole question period after this, so stay on if you want to. This is the closing that you do after every session. It's all about those lifelines. It's all about teaching separation and connection. May we listen to our deepest selves. May we be open to life's gifts. And may we be moved to serve needs greater than our own. Blessed be. Amen. There we go. So that is Crossing Paths in a nutshell. It's a deep program that's not everything, but there it is. So that's your orientation, and I'm happy to stay on for questions, and we'll keep recording in case our listening audience wants to hear the questions too. That was a lot of material, so feel free to ask questions.
Hey, Katie, do you supply, does Soul Matters supply a form letter or something we can cut and paste into emails about coordinating those visits?
You know, there is a lot of material there on coordinating the visits. It's
Okay.
not as an email or a
Okay.
form letter, because we don't know if you're doing a virtual visit. We
Right.
don't know if you're doing, you know, meet on Saturday at the temple of such and such. So it's not a form letter, but there's a whole like bulleted list of here's the things to,
Perfect.
like, here's the things to tell the leader about what your visit is all about, to try to capture in a few words what you're trying to do, so they don't feel like, oh, weird, they want to come, or they're gonna make fun of us, that kind of thing. Any other questions? Oh yes, and I'm not going to forget to put that the webinar slides in here. Let me get to it. This is the multi-platform.
And where will we find the webinar slides?
I'm going to give you the link right
Okay.
now in the chat box, and you can always email me, but if you can't grab it, but they will be in the chat box. And here,
Got it. Thank you.
yes. Copy link. That way you can use these slides. There we go. Chat, chat, chat. Come on. To everyone. Here we go. There. So that's the Google Doc. So you have a set of slides. They're not exactly these slides because I put an entry one in that says, please make a copy for yourself. Don't change the actual template of these slides. And you can use them any way you want, but at least you have the general gist of what we're doing. Yeah. Any other questions? Especially after you see the Google Doc. All right. Well, in that case, I'm going to say goodbye. I really appreciate you coming on because this time spent getting oriented is going to save you time when you get those packets. It's a good investment. And it's a beautiful summer evening. And so I'll let you go. Bye, everybody.
Exciting. Thank you, everybody.